What are your feelings about 9/11?
I have questions about it now, like many of us do. I think it's growing and growing with the population that more and more of us are questioning what happened that day. And we're also looking to find out if the truth was withheld from us. Why was the 9/11 Commission, when it first started, made a statement that they weren't there to judge anyone? Well, then what were they there for? What was their purpose? In hindsight, when I look at what happened that day, I have a difficult time trying to figure out how a fire can drop a skyscraper. And why aren't we being warned today then? If what they said is true about Building 7, the third building, that it fell because of only fire, and why aren't we being warned that fire alone can drop a skyscraper to the ground?
What purpose would the government have in keeping the truth from the American people?
Well,
what could be the
Well, let's examine something. Thomas Jefferson, one of his most famous quotes was, "Dissension is the greatest form of patriotism." That was said by Thomas Jefferson. I find it very disturbing that since 9/11, we've been following the philosophies of Hermann Göring, a Nazi. Hermann Göring made the statement that it's easy to take a country to war. Easy. It doesn't matter if they're a democracy, a dictatorship, communist, or anything. What you must first do is convince the people they're under attack. Then you denounce all the pacifists for being unpatriotic. And you also state that they're putting the country in danger because of the position they're taking, empowering the enemy. Now, isn't that the exact thing we've been told since 9/11? I ask you that. Is that what we've been told?
Well, I'm not here to answer questions. I'm here to ask the questions.
If you do interviews with me, you be prepared to answer questions too. I'm asking your opinion. You ask me a question. Is that not what we've been told since 9/11?
Well, again, sir, I'm not here to give my personal opinion. So,
do you believe that?
That's really copping out, if you ask me. But the point is, why are we following the philosophy of Hermann Göring? And yet we're not following what Thomas Jefferson said. Dissension's the greatest form of patriotism. We're told if you dissent, you're unpatriotic.
Do you believe that Muslim extremists were part of the plot?
I don't know. Let's look at the government's theory, and theirs is only a theory. I ask you this question. Why has Osama bin Laden not been charged by the Department of Justice for 9/11? They charged him when he attacked our embassy in '98. They convened a grand jury, they presented evidence, and the grand jury came down with an indictment. Why has he not been indicted for 9/11? Why, when you go to the FBI website and you pull up international terrorism, and they have their top 10 terrorist lists, which bin Laden's on, when you pull his name up, the attack on the Coles there, the attack on the embassies there, but amazingly 9/11's not. The largest single terrorist attack in history, our own FBI doesn't credit him for. And when pressed, you know what their answer was? We don't have enough evidence. Now excuse me, we've gone to 2 wars, we've changed our entire foreign policy, and we've had the Patriot Act put on us, which strips us of our rights. And they don't have enough evidence to charge this man? How do you put a bounty on someone if you haven't charged them?
Who do you believe?
Now, let me ask this. Why am I doing your jobs? Why am I doing your jobs? You're making me investigate, and now you're questioning me when it should be the opposite. You should be investigating, and I should be questioning you on your investigations. But you guys are all dropping the ball. Don't you find that a bit interesting that the FBI doesn't list 9/11? Don't you think you ought to go ask them?
Who do you believe
I don't
was
know.
behind the attacks?
I do not know. But I do know that there are a lot of unanswered questions. Why was no one put under oath at the 9/11 commissions? To tell the truth. Why did they allow a president and a vice president to testify together in a room, not under oath? That's very peculiar to me.
You're suggesting that this
I'm not suggesting anything.
Well, you're asking
I am
questions.
simply asking questions, and the last time I checked, I believe the First Amendment to our Constitution allows you to do that.
Seems like you're the one with all the microphones and cameras in front of you right now.
That's your call.
Governor, what do you Governor, what do you hope to accomplish with this?
It's called the truth. I'd like to know the truth. I'd like to know that, did we go to war, 2 wars over a lie? I mean, let's remember, I went and taught at Harvard in 2004, and McNamara came through, and they've now admitted the Gulf of Tonkin incident never happened. Well, for those of you too young to know, that was the incident that got us full-fledged into the Vietnam War, where 58,000 of my generation died. Who knows how many Vietnamese died? And yet that incident didn't happen. You don't find that a bit concerning? That we went to a war based upon lies? It sounds familiar, doesn't it? Taking the country to war based upon lies. What disturbs me is they always say history will repeat itself. Well, I'm now seeing it repeat itself within decades, not even within a lifetime.
So you don't have an opinion about Pearl Harbor?
No. But I will say this, what caused me to have my first doubting of 9/11 was when the president announced we were going to invade Iraq. Because even according, now let's look at the government's theory, and theirs is only a theory. The government's theory is that 19 Islamic terrorists armed with box cutters defeated our multi-billion-dollar air defense system, all while conspiring with a bearded guy in a cave in Afghanistan. Oh, you're all chuckling. Gee, why would you chuckle over that? That's what they've told us. That's what we're to accept. I find that far-fetched. As a former chief executive of Minnesota, if a disaster would have occurred on my watch, I would immediately order an investigation, because number one, you'd want to know what happened, you'd want to know why it happened, and you certainly would want to know to prevent it from happening again. And yet our president stonewalled an investigation for over 2 years. I find that peculiar, very peculiar.
Did you support the invasion of Afghanistan?
At the time, yes. The invasion of Iraq, no. That's what first made me a skeptic when they announced they were going into Iraq, because I said even by their definition of what happened, there wasn't one Iraqi involved. Why would we attack Iraq? It's kind of like Pearl Harbor. The Japanese attacked us at Pearl Harbor. Well, imagine if we'd have decided to attack Korea. After all, they're Asian too, aren't they? Well, that seems to be the mindset we have. It doesn't matter who we attack as long as they're Muslim.
Do you believe in the multiple collapse theory that a lot of engineers have put forth as to why the towers in Building 7 collapsed?
No.
Why?
I don't believe it at all.
Well, they're engineers.
Well, they're engineers. Well, then why aren't we getting a warning, sir? No, why aren't they warning the country and taking away all smoking and skyscrapers, take away hot plates, anything that could start a fire? And I challenge you, the next time a building has to fall and come down, let's not bring in the demo people. Let's just light it on fire and see if that building collapses to the ground.
I believe what the engineers have said is that the heat of the fire, not a fire from a cigarette or a hot plate, but the intensity of the heat and the blast that knocked off. I'm just telling you what they said.
Okay, let me counter that.
Are you going to let me finish? Or
no, I'm going to take it one at a time. The heat, okay, if you looked at the smoke, any firefighter will tell you when the smoke gets darker and thicker, the fire is cooling. It's not getting hotter. The billows of smoke at 9/11 were getting progressively darker and thicker. That means the fire is not getting hotter, it's cooling.
I don't know if it's conclusively true or untrue.
Okay, Building 7 was not struck by a plane. What knocked off the asbestos in that building?
I'm not an engineer, I don't know.
I'm asking you a common sense. You're telling me that the engineers said the blast of the plane. Well, Building 7 was never hit by a plane, and it fell in a little over 6 seconds. You don't find that peculiar?
I don't know if it was structurally built the same way.
What about the first NIST engineer that was fired, because through all of his analysis he came up with the wrong answer?
Yeah, what about him?
Governor, what do you make
fired.
Is there any risk that this is causing more harm for the families and the victims 7 years later?
Then why are the victims asking for a new investigation?
I'm a family member, and
if this is causing them harm, why are all the victims demanding another investigation?
All of them?
The great majority, a great many of them are. I can't state all of them.
How many does it take?
How many does it take? Why don't you guys try doing your damn jobs?